Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Veterans Day. I can't think of a better way to honor our veterans than to working on bolstering our democracy. This is the Progressive Democrats Nominating Convention. We are actually not voting today. This is a way to get to know the progressives running for positions in the party. Just so you know, your donations will be most appreciated. These events cost money to put on. I heard earlier that the tickets were cut off. We've reactivated those. You can buy tickets and make a donation for the rest of the day if you would like to, and of course we'd appreciate it if you would. But if tickets are free, if that's your only option. Again, these things are kind of expensive to put on, so any help would be appreciated. We really like the Bernie Sanders model of lots of people making small donations to make these things possible. So the agenda today, I'm going to talk a little bit about your rights, and then we will talk about the county and state election processes, and then we'll get to the actual speeches from the candidates. So again, the intention of this event is to promote awareness of how the Democratic Party elections are run and to promote the candidates that represent the 56% of the Democratic Party that is progressive. And just so you know, this event is not sponsored by the Democratic Party of Oregon. Many people called the Democratic Party of Oregon to find out the details on this. This is not a Democratic Party function. This is the Progressive Caucus, the Progressive Coalition of Democrats in the state organizing themselves. And please be aware that this does not replace the county and state processes for nominations and elections, and we'll talk about those later. So the first thing I want to talk about, because we have many new precinct committee persons in the state as a result of the elections last May. This is your first time as a precinct committee person, and you might be unaware of your rights. Your rights are in laws and in bylaws, and you really need to be aware of them so that you can stand up for them. Our favorite poster child event that you can see in YouTube was the 2016 Nevada Democratic Convention. You can see some egregious abuses of the rights of the people in the convention, and what we want everyone to understand is what your rights are so you can demand them if you should ever come across that kind of a situation again. Like this. Sorry about that. Your rights as a precinct committee person is defined by these documents in this order. The Oregon statutes defines your rights. Your county and central committee bylaws define your rights. And then anything that is not articulated in those defaults to Robert's Rules of Order. You can find these documents, and you can see what they are. You have to know your rights and in order to protect them. As a precinct committee person, you are entitled to full participation in the proceedings, including attending meetings, making motions, speaking in debate, voting, and any basic right associated with these rights, like making nominations. Earlier we found out that there were counties that were denying people participation because they showed up at meetings late. That is a violation of parliamentary procedure. So in order to know and protect your rights, we offer ways for you to study parliamentary procedure. You can go to the website pdpo.org and sign up. We have a virtual group that's organized within the National Association of Parliamentarians, and we meet monthly, and it's a great way for you to meet with other professional parliamentarians and go through the concepts of democracy and how parliamentary procedure works, because it's not quite as straightforward as many people believe. So, elections that you need to participate in. The first thing you need to know about Oregon elections is that you need to know your geography. Within the party, there are two geographic entities that you need to be aware of. The first one is the counties, and the second one is the congressional districts. So each county has a central committee, which is sort of a base unit within the Democratic Party of Oregon. Every county has a central committee which has a chair, a vice chair, a treasurer, and a secretary, and then they also elect delegates to the central committee, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then there are entities that are based on the congressional districts. 2/3 of the state is Congressional District 2, which is the eastern half of the state, and then the other 4 congressional districts are on the west side of the state. And most people know who their U.S. representative are. Those people represent you in Congress. So how those fit in will come up a little bit later. The structure of the Democratic Party is based on really a finite set of roles. It's a very complicated process to get elected to these various roles, and that's why I'm going through it today. But really, the key officers in the central committees and in the Democratic Party of Oregon are the chair, the vice chair, the secretary, and the treasurer. Some counties have 2 vice chairs. And the specific activities that these roles are responsible for are articulated within the bylaws of each county. So to find out what these do, if you would like to run for any of them, find your county bylaws and read through them. There are many counties that really struggle to find people to fill these roles, and so if you have any inclination to get involved with your county party, I'm sure that they would welcome you there. The next concept is a delegate, and those are people that are represented to represent each of the counties and the Democrats within each county to the State Central Committee, which is really the assembly that is the heart and soul of the Democratic Party of Oregon. Every county has a minimum of 2 delegates to the State Central Committee, and it goes up to as many as 20, which is what Multnomah has. And it is this collection of people plus a few more delegates that comprise the State Central Committee. They're the people that vote on resolutions. They elect officers within the Democratic Party of Oregon. They meet quarterly around the state and really debate the issues that are important to Democrats. There are also delegates to the congressional district committees, of which there are 5. Their primary responsibility is to elect the members of the standing committees of the Democratic Party of Oregon, and we'll talk a little bit about those later. The standing committees is where a lot of the fundamental work is done within the party itself. Qualifications for chairs, and this is straight out of Robert's Rules of Order. They should be chosen for their ability to preside. They should be well versed in parliamentary law, which comprehends the principles of democracy. They need to be familiar with the state statutes and the bylaws, and it is critically important for the chair to follow the will of the majority, which is the fundamental concept of democracy. How leadership is elected. So this slide is an overview of the overall process, and then I'm going to break this down into its components. The core unit, the voting unit in the state, of course, is the precinct committee persons. We elected all of those last May for a 2-year term. Your precinct committee persons represents the Democrats inside of the precincts. The entire state is divided up into precincts. Those are the people that represent the Democrats in those precincts to the Democratic Party of Oregon and participate in the county activities. Starting next week, we have a series of reorganizations, and what those are the meetings where all of the counties get together and elect their officers and delegates for the upcoming 2 years. What they elect are the delegates to the Democratic Party of Oregon State Central Committee. They elect their officers, and then the delegates to the congressional district. It is these people then who elect a further set of officers. The delegates to the DPO State Central Committee elect the delegates to the Democratic National Committee. I'm sure all of you have heard of that. They are the ones that elect the chair, the 2 vice chairs, and the secretary of the Democratic Party of Oregon. And they also participate in the election of the members of the Rules Committee. The county officers are just responsible for their counties, although many of the chairs of the counties are automatic delegates to the State Central Committee. And then the precinct committee people elect the delegates to the congressional district. And then, as I said, the members of the congressional district committees join with the delegates to the State Central Committee to elect the members of the standing committees. Again, county leadership. County officers are generally elected after the November election, although it is really up to them on when they do this. Some counties do this in the odd year. So I think Columbia County reorganizes in 2019. But for the most part, after the election in November is when most of the counties reorganize. The congressional district committees, of which there are 5, also decide when they meet. They reorganize in the first 2 months of the new year. So they'll be coming up in January and February. You actually need delegates from the counties elected for them to have their new leadership in place to vote. We do not elect Democratic National Committee members in this cycle. Those are elected immediately after the presidential elections. They are for 4-year terms, and our 3 DNC members have 2 more years on their terms. But they represent you along with the chair and the first vice chair in the Democratic National Committee. They vote for the DNC officers and for resolutions that come before them. Our representatives have done a very active job this past year representing us on our issues that are important to Oregonians, and have done a really good job. Again, it is the delegates to the State Central Committee that elect the chair and the 2 vice chairs and the secretary. This happens at the reorganization of the Democratic Party of Oregon, which I believe is scheduled for March 16th and 17th of next year. So after most of the counties have then elected their delegates is when the State Central Committee has their meeting to elect the leadership for the subsequent 2 years. These positions are very important. The chair of the Democratic Party appoints the chair of the standing committees, and those roles have a lot of control over what happens. And they also appoint the treasurer. And then the chair and the first vice chair are the 4th and 5th members of the Democratic National Committee representing us. Standing committee members, there are 5 committees. There are 3 committees that are critically important. There's the Platform and Resolutions Committee, which is the committee that writes the resolutions, that expresses the beliefs of the party. There's the DPO Rules Committee, which proposes changes, if needed, to the bylaws, and also writes the rules to any of the statewide conventions, of which there will be a few coming up. Their Credentials Committee is also critical because they're the ones that give the credentials to State Central Committee members in order to participate in each of the 4 meetings. There's roughly 169 SCC members at this point. And so the Credentials Committee is responsible for tracking them and for replacing them if a delegate cannot attend a meeting and an alternate steps in. This is a process that if you're an alternate, you want to watch very closely, because you might be able to participate and vote in a meeting if one of your regular delegates do not attend. Next steps if you are a precinct committee person. So you need to find out when your county reorganization date is, the time and the location. By law, you must have been notified by U.S. Postal Service of the meeting, and by all means attend the meeting and vote. At the reorganization meeting, you should be aware there is no proxy voting. You have to physically be there to vote. And there is a distinction between elected PCPs that were elected last May and appointed PCPs who can be appointed at any point in time. Only the elected precinct committee persons can vote for officers. So the chair, vice chairs, and secretary and treasurer. The appointed PCPs can vote for the delegates and also the elected. So everyone gets to vote for delegates. Only elected PCPs can vote for the officers. Pardon? You are correct. So the slide is an error, and I will fix that. If you want to run for any of these positions, which is really what the focus of today's meeting is for, you need to find out your county's reorganization date so you can participate in the election. You might be able to contact them through the website or the chair, but you need to find out about the nomination process. Ordinarily, counties have nominations committees, and their responsibility is to collect the names of people who want to run for these positions. They're not there to gate people to run, but to find out who wants to run, take down their names, and encourage people to run for these positions so that the electorate has a choice. You need to submit your name to these positions. If you do not get in on the nomination committee so that you're listed on the ballot, you should be able to be nominated from the floor that night as a write-in candidate. I'd encourage you to contact the precinct committee persons within your county and talk to them about your candidacy and tell them why you want to run and why you want to be elected. By all means, prepare a nomination speech, and then as I said, if you don't get your name on the ballot, nominate yourself from the floor. These are the known reorganization dates that we could track down for 16 of the counties, and I believe these are the major counties, but as you can see, they kick off starting tomorrow in Harney County. We have two big counties coming up on the 15th, Clackamas County and Marion County, and then we have a very big election on Saturday, the 17th, which is Washington County, and then they are sprinkled through the rest of November and the beginning of December, and then some go into January. Generally, by the end of January, most of them have occurred. If you don't know how to contact your county party, you can go to the Democratic Party of Oregon website, which is dpo.org. This is what the county directory looks like. If you click on the name of any county that you're interested in, it should come up with the phone number and name of at least the chair, so you can call them and find out when these events happen. This next 2-year cycle is going to be very exciting for a couple of reasons. We have the 2020 Democratic Convention coming up, and if anyone is involved with this group, which is Advancement of Democracy, we will keep you apprised of the activities going on so that you can participate in the convention if you want to. Planning for the 2020 convention has already started. They've limited the sites for the event down to 3, and so in the coming months they will select the site for the convention. The other thing that happens is that each of the states are requested to submit their processes for selecting delegates to the Democratic National Convention, and that's what we will track for you and make sure that you can participate. Because it might actually be a contested election for the nominee for the Democratic Party, this could be a very, very interesting convention. After the first vote, everyone is then released to vote for whomever they want. And if we go into the convention with three candidates, there could be several votes before we come up with a nominee for the Democratic Party. And the pictures that I showed in this slide are really just the top contenders that was listed in the New York Times. There's actually more people that are running. Yes, Pete?
One thing that I've always wondered about, so in terms of the vote, does it need to be 50% plus one of the delegates at the DNC?
I would be shocked if it was a plurality, because that means there would only be one vote. I think you have to have a majority. But it depends on how the rules are written, and those come out of the Rules Committee, and they could be altered. So they altered the rules when they changed the rule at the second to last meeting, I believe, which altered the powers of the superdelegates and made this rule about delegates being released after the first vote. And if you want to know the details on the convention, I would track them. So now yes, there we have another question from the audience.
Am I correct in understanding that superdelegates are not able to vote on the first ballot?
That is my understanding, yes. Superba. Yes, thank you. The question was, is it true that superdelegates do not vote on the first ballot? And it's my understanding that yes, they do not vote on the first ballot. They will vote on the second and subsequent ballots, if there are any, along with all the delegates that have been set free. Yes, that is a new change that the Democratic National Committee instituted. Thank you. We had 4 delegates that are not able to join us today, and so I'm going to read their names so that people are familiar with them. Eleanor Wynn is going to be running for a congressional district slot in Clackamas County. Kate Flanagan will be running for a congressional district delegate position in Multnomah County. Barbara Glazer will be running for a state central committee delegate in Washington County, and Lisa Stiller will be running for a state central committee delegate position in Washington County. Yes, Lucinda. So if your question is, as your point is you're going to run for something, we're going to give you an opportunity to talk later. So these are the people who said that they were going to run for something but couldn't attend today. But you're able to attend. So welcome. No. So with that, we will go to the candidate speeches. The first up, so I'll start with Multnomah County, and the first up is Graham. So Graham, please come up and speak to your candidacy and why you want to be elected.
Hello, my name is Graham Parks. I am running for State Central Committee delegate from Multnomah County. This is my daughter who has wanted to accompany me up here on the stage. Her name is Pippi. She's going by Cassidy also. I think that as Democrats, especially on the lefter wing of the Democratic Party, we owe the Trumpists a show. We have had a very difficult 2 years, but we've had a solidifying 2 years also, and I think that we have managed to make great gains within the Democratic Party of Oregon, and I have been privileged to be a part of that as a State Central Committee delegate and as a delegate from the 3rd Congressional District on the Standing Committee for Rules. And I would like to continue in that capacity. And here I pass it back to you.
Thank you. Would the other candidates from Multnomah County please come on up? And next we have Joel Barker. Is Joel in the room? Joel did not make it today. Michael Smith? Michael Smith make it today? Michael's running for vice chair of Multnomah County. A lot of people are having trouble finding parking, and so they might be coming in later. Mark Kohler.
Thank you. As you said, my name is Mark Kohler. I actually ran this past election as a member of the Independent Party, Progressive Party, and Green Party for U.S. Congress. I was able to bring together I think a pretty strong coalition of individuals who are disenfranchised in a lot of ways. As of the day after the election, I switched back to my prior life as a Democrat to be able to become part of this organization. And I really believe we have a tremendous opportunity to really build an incredibly strong progressive Democratic Party in this state, and I think that's something that I can add a lot to. I'm not sure exactly, to tell you the truth, which position I'll be running for. I talked to Larry and some others, and there may be some conversations about where it might be best for me to be involved. But I really hope to be able to work full-time in this organization to really bring about the transition that I think is critical to the Democratic Party if we are indeed going to, as a nation, overturn the Trump agenda that we are living with, is to be a much more progressive Democratic Party than we have currently been. So I look forward to working with this organization and being a part of it in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next up will be Laurel Robbins. Laurel is the current chair of the Multnomah County Democrats, who's done a phenomenal job of bringing that organization together.
Thank you, Larry. Okay. Hello, everybody. I believe in a people-based governing process, and it's messy. But I will continue to that project of being messy, of being open and transparent, so that everybody involved in the Multnomah County Democrats can be involved. So my name's Laurel Robbins. The Democratic Party of Multnomah County is progressive. I'm a liberal progressive, and I believe that together we must all be pragmatic to make things work for all of us. So when we come together to get out the vote in Multnomah County, we win. And we saw that in the last election on November 6th. We are 270,000 Democrats, 750 PCPs, 7 standing committees, 10 study groups, 5 work groups, and you. And we are all volunteers, and we need you to be engaged with us. So the volunteers in our party have put in over tens of thousands of hours over the last 2 years. And I think that's really amazing. But we can do more if you get engaged with us. So what we do in a 2-hour central committee meeting is limited. But what you do behind the scenes is where democracy starts. We have open processes. We will continue to find better ways to communicate so that you can impact the things that you're passionate about. In Multnomah County, we passed progressive resolutions to support Elliott State Forest, healthcare for all, in support of our transgender community, and to oppose police brutality and militarization. We will work to influence police policy and the expungement of marijuana-related crimes. But 2 big initiatives where we will succeed are, 1, racial inclusivity. We will make sure that all people of color are welcome to get involved and know their input is needed and respected. As Greg Burrell has stated, we must interrupt and eradicate racism. It's subtle and overt, and it prevents us from being truly democratic for all the people. And as Rochelle Dixon states, we need action that works, not more ally education. So it's time now to make change. Our legislative liaison program, that's our people's lobby. And we will work to impact our elected representatives so that our progressive voices are heard over the clamor of money and special interest lobbyists. We will be the 99% lobby. First, we will work for meaningful revenue reform similar to Measure 97, because tweaking what the middle and the poor pay through sin and sales taxes is not sustainable. It's not fair, and it doesn't bring what we all work for to elect Democrats to fruition. We will win if people pay less and receive more, while the 1% contribute more. It's time for corporations and mega wealthy to contribute to our future so that we can implement the next 3 important issues: improved Medicare or health care for all of Oregon residents, a top-notch locally controlled education system that does not funnel our money to corporate testing firms and corporate out-of-state online schools, and a statewide solar and wind environmental program that benefits every resident, not just the powerful lobbyists and the power companies. So thank you. I'm Laurel Robbins.
Thank you, Laurel. In terms of a process on speaking, I'm going to go through the people who registered first, and then we will pick up all the people who walked in who would also like to speak today. So that was the registered group from Multnomah County. Next up is Washington County, and we'll start with Dan Riker. Please come on up, Dan. I'm sorry, Clackamas County.
Thank you, Larry. Hello, I'm Dan Riker. I'm running for CD3 in Clackamas County, running for re-election to CD3. I'm the vice chair of the CD3 committee. And I'm also running for the State Central Committee in Clackamas County. I am currently a member of the State Central Committee. I'm also a member of the State Rules Committee. If you remember, 2 years ago, anyone who was elected to the State Central Committee prior to the December State Central Committee meeting was not allowed to vote. The old State Central Committee members got to vote. I drew up an amendment to the state bylaws, and we got it passed, and we established that when you're elected, you take office. So at this time, whoever is elected to the State Central Committee before December will be able to vote. I also wrote part of the amendment that provided for recognition of non-binary individuals in elections. And in Clackamas County, we're having an election on Thursday in which a person can register as male, female, or non-binary, and they're elected. We have 7 positions. No one gender can fill more than 4. So we've provided balance, but we also provided recognition. So that's another thing that I think we're going to need to do in other counties as well, and maybe in the committees. 3 years ago, I began this process. I had been the state coordinator for the Progressive Democrats of America's We Want Bernie campaign. However, there were so many local groups that we eventually just merged our groups with theirs. So Sandy Krebs and I started an activity almost exactly 3 years ago to get Bernie people into the Democratic Party, to make the party more progressive. As a parallel, Larry was doing the same thing. I didn't even know about it at the time. I found out a few months later. So every 2 weeks we met in Happy Valley. We got several hundred people into the party in Clackamas County and Multnomah County and some in Washington County as PCPs. And in the elections that year, the progressives took control of both parties. That's when Laurel, I think, got elected. I personally agree with your entire program in Multnomah County and would support it at the state level. And I think we need to push those things. I'm pushing for changes in the bylaws, including creating a standing campaign committee and a standing legislative committee. And the legislative committee's purpose would to take the platform and try to get the legislature to adopt it. Because right now, once the platform's written, it dies. Nobody pays attention to it. We need to push that harder, and we can do it. There's a lot more I can say about this, but I think I've taken as much time as I should. I hope if you're in Clackamas County that you will vote for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Next up is Mark Gamba. Come on up to the podium, Mark.
Thanks, Larry. I'm Mark Gamba, the recently re-elected mayor of Milwaukee, and I'm running for CD5 and the State Central Committee. I've dedicated the last 6 years of my life to inspiring and leading my community in a positive and powerful direction. When I got on council, it was filled with old white men. Through my leadership, encouragement, and support, when my council sits in January, I will be the only old white man on it. True representation is critical to fixing all the things wrong in our society. The charters, the rules, the standards, and the systems are all designed to maintain control of our society in the hands of the wealthy, typically old white people. I seek to change that. For many reasons, the problems that our federal government chooses to address are rich white people problems. They are not the problems of the 99%, which is why our federal government is failing to address critical issues, the critical issues of our time, like climate change, income inequality, world-class education, and Medicare for all. Instead, it reduces taxes on the rich, who are already paying far less than their fair share. It starts wars and spends more on the military than the next 10 nations combined, 8 of which are our allies. It ignores crumbling infrastructure. It fails to move our transportation system into the 21st century, and it fails to solve for the problem that millions of jobs do not pay a living wage, and millions more are being lost to automation. These and many others are the real-world problems of the 99%. As a state central committee member over the last year, I helped write powerful planks in our legislative action items addressing universal health care and climate change. If reelected, I will strongly encourage our party to create separate, short, unambiguous legislative active items for our state legislator and for our federal delegates, and then a process to hold our members accountable for addressing our priorities. The 5th Congressional District has changed substantially since 2009, and it will change even more after the 2020 redistricting. The CD5 Steering Committee has an incredible challenge ahead. We need to be able to anticipate and prepare for a future that will not look like our past. Housing and transportation will and need to change. And whether or not our agriculture and our forest industries can continue to function the way they do in the face of climate change and the severe weather it brings are a few key questions that must be asked. Other questions are what are the jobs of the future? How do we prepare our workforce to meet them, and how will they be compensated for those jobs? Will we continue to be a place where the 1% get richer while the rest get poorer? Most importantly, how we address climate change will determine what kind of future our children have. There are two possible broad conceptual responses to each of those questions. The first response, the fear-based response, is to defend the status quo, seeking to freeze in time and space a way of doing things that is not sustainable. The second, the realistic and hopeful response, is to recognize that we must create the changes we need to thrive and then act decisively on that recognition. This will require a public policy debate not seen on a scale not seen since the country agreed to end slavery, and a level of focused action not seen since World War II. The outcome of large-scale public policy debates are not preordained. Some have created generational changes and others have failed to do so. Very often those differences came down to visionary leadership. I am seeking this position because I am committed to supporting our elected Democrats when they take the bold actions required. I'm equally committed to holding them responsible for the costs and hardships that they are inflicting on us when they shrink from these challenges. I'm Mark Gamba, and I would ask for your support.
Thank you, Mark. I want to commend Mark and Clackamas Chair Peter Norby for the phenomenal job they've done in turning around Clackamas County. If you didn't know, the 3 of the seats that flipped from Republican to Democrat were in Clackamas County, and that's because of their work. Thank you. Now we'll go to Marion County. First up will be Lowell Wetzel. Please come on up. And I'll answer the questions that have come in on the line after we finish with the candidates.
One position or all 3? Or all?
Whatever you'd like to do.
Oh, okay. Hello, my name is Lowell Wetzel, and currently I'm a CD5 delegate as well as an SCC delegate, and I've worked on several of the campaigns in Marion County, as well as national campaigns, I guess, and statewide campaigns. I am running for Treasurer of Marion County, Democrats, as well as CD5 delegate, SCC delegate, and SCC Rules Committee. And I, as a long-term Democrat, and switched from Green Party because I was opposed to free trade, so I switched my party and realized that being outside of the party does not help you change anything. So I've come back into the party, and I'm here to try to help the Democrats return more to their FDR roots, which I realize that makes me a crazy Bernie delegate or something, but I am here to bring the party back to its FDR roots and get the party to understand that, as you were saying, we need to get our calculation, for example, for such things as a living wage need to include retirement savings, because we have eliminated pensions in this country because of a tax law change in the 80s where we changed pensions from a liability to an asset, which allowed vulture capital firms to come in and steal those assets. So we need to, as a party, get back and realize that even these small financial changes or small accounting rule changes have huge impact later in life. And we need to, as a party, to understand that these small changes destroy lives later. As a CD5 delegate and an SCC delegate, I am here to represent Marion County and the voters in this county.
Thank you, Lowell. And Daphne Tadlock, is Daphne here? Daphne also registered to run as a SCC delegate, I believe. Next up is Washington County, and we'll start with Farah, and then do Keith, and then do Patrick. So come on up to the podium, Farah. Washington County is also another one that's been very, very active and has elected, along with Clackamas, literally hundreds of precinct committee people and filled slots that have been empty for years. Welcome, Farah.
Thank you. I swear I'm not Facebooking, it's just my notes. I am currently a CD1 delegate and an alternate to the State Central Committee's Platform and Resolutions Committee, and I am running for both SCC delegate and CD1 delegate. It's really interesting being at the SCC meetings, getting to see what's happening, and then us just narrowly missing some sort of progressive vote by just a few numbers. So I hope to be on the winning side, getting more progressive stuff passed at the SCC. The bigger race for me personally is the vice chair for Washington County. I don't know how many of you are familiar with what we've been doing out there, but there's been a lot of discord, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to change the way we run things, and I want to be part of that. Personally, I think that we have too many events that cost money or are boring meetings, and maybe we could change that, not just in our county, but across the state with the DPO. When we have our state central committee meetings, we could probably do like a cookout or a potluck or a meetup or something that doesn't cost money like the fundraisers do. Also, I think that our legislators work for us, and too frequently we are acting like we work for them. I think it's important for us to get out the vote for our legislators, but they need to return the favor. When we ask them to do something and they don't do it, we can't just say, well, they just don't have the time or they don't have the numbers. We really need to be pressing them to get progressive changes implemented. And now that Governor Brown has another 4 years, I really want us to hold her feet to the fire on campaign finance reform like she said she would. I also think we should be pressing her on the Jordan Cove pipeline, which she's been pretty silent on, and that corporations are paying their fair share of taxes instead of making us pay their fair share of taxes. So I'm Farah Chaichi, and if you're in Washington County, I hope I have your vote.
Thank you, Farah. Keith? In addition to what Keith is be talking to, he's also the newest member of the National Association of Parliamentarians here in Oregon.
Thank you, Larry. I also have my notes on my phone. Thank you all for showing up today. Beautiful Sunday afternoon. My name is Keith Paxton. I live in Washington County. It's fitting to mention that I'm a veteran because apparently it's Veterans Day. I'm also I feel I have to mention that I'm a non-binary identifying person, and I thank Dan for helping to make, to allow me to have a place in the party and to fit in. This year, 2018 will be the first time I get to run as a non-binary person for anything since I've been a Democrat. So that's nice. Thank you all for helping to make that possible. I'm also a delegate to CD1. I'm currently an SEC delegate because I got bumped up from being an alternate, and chair of the Progressive Caucus of Washington County, and I'm also a Democratic Socialist, and I think that's important to mention. Right now, as I see it, there are some big problems with our party, and I'm going to talk about specifically the DPO level stuff. I could talk about Washington County. I'm also running for treasurer of Washington County, but I'm going to stick to the my SEC delegate position that I'm running for. Over the last 2 years, I've seen countless votes in the SEC go the wrong way. I've seen the establishment, our party's chair and other people primarily that she's appointed to positions of power, vote down democracy. The people in some Washington County delegates voted down open primaries. They voted down, electing standing committee chairs. And they also sometimes don't show us our full financials, even though we request them and want to see them in our regular financial reports. And then I could also point out a couple times where, let's just say they don't follow the rules, So I think we need to have people in power who follow the rules, and if they don't, we need to hold them accountable. So what I'm here to do is to help hold them accountable. I have experience fighting the establishment's obstruction and winning real reforms. I've done it in Washington County. I hope to be able to do it at the DPO level. Over the last 2 years, I've primarily been an alternate, and that has limited my ability, even if I'm able to vote at that meeting, it's limited my ability to participate in the SEC as not being a full delegate. I think it's also important to have integrity, doing the right thing when no one's looking, doing the right thing when it might even be against your personal interests. That's what being accountable, that's what being a leader and having integrity means, is just doing the right thing, That's why we should be electing people who have integrity, and those should be the only people that we elect. And I think that's pretty much it. I just want to ask for your vote for SEC delegate if you're in Washington County, and I hope to be representing you in the future.
Thank you, Keith. And also from Washington County, we have Patrick McGuire. Come on up, Patrick. Patrick is a fellow Astorian.
Thank you, Larry. I am originally from Astoria. I grew up there. I've lived in Washington County for 7 or 8 years now. I'd like to introduce myself briefly for those of you who may not know who I am. I decided to get more involved in local politics. I was inspired by the Sanders campaign in 2016, and I wanted to see how I could make a difference in people's lives and in the world. So I got involved with my local county Democratic Party and met some really wonderful people who were also wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And I was surprised to be asked to run to serve as our party secretary last year, and I've enjoyed serving in that role, and I've tried to do it well and give it my all. And I was also truly surprised to be asked by a number of people to run to serve as chair of our county party for the 2019-2020 term. And after a lot of thought, I decided I'd go ahead and do it because I thought I could make a difference. My vision, my view of what our Democratic Party should be is at a broad level reflected in the famous line from Winston Churchill that it's not always enough to do our best, sometimes we have to do what's required. And what I mean by that is, for people who need to see a doctor, it's not enough to say we're doing our best on health care. What's required is that we support policies that allow them to see a doctor. For those who are homeless, it's not enough to say we're doing our best on housing. What's required for them is that they have a home. And similarly, for students who want to go to college or go to technical education, it's not enough to say we're doing our best on college affordability. We need to make sure they can actually go to college without crippling debt. So our party needs to be a party that does what's required for the people of Oregon. Thank you. Now, a few points that are near to my heart with regard to offering myself to serve as county party chair. We're not going to succeed in politics, in my view, if political involvement is something that only certain people can participate in. For instance, in this time of very grave national crisis, while about 70% of retired folks are planning to vote, only about 1 in 3 people under the age of 35 is planning to vote. We need to do more to reach out to young people, and I'm planning to do the lead on that in our county. I've done some things as secretary, I've met with our college Democrats and done what I can, but to do more, I'm hoping to be elected chair. Another key point for me is that we don't just need to talk about inclusion and diversity. That we've been talking about it for a while, to be honest, but we have to let these communities lead us. At a time when immigration authorities are ripping apart parents and children in heartbreaking numbers, and black men and boys are being shot, terrible, heartbreaking numbers also, really. These communities, though, they're showing us how to resist, how to lead in that effort. The groups like CAUSA and Black Lives Matter. So we need to follow their lead. We need to, as a party, see what they're doing and support that. I've reached out to the leaders of our county's Latinx Outreach and Black American Caucus, the state parties, Black Caucus leadership, to get ideas on how we can really make a difference in improving the diversity, but also moving toward what these movements are leading on. So what I'd really like to do is serve as chair of the Washington County Democratic Party in support of those who are doers, not just talkers, those who are wanting to make a real and positive change in people's lives, those who see the Democratic Party not as a small, insular, inward-looking party, but those who see it as a bold, outward-looking party seeking to change the world. So if that's what you see, then I'd be happy to serve as your chair if you're from Washington County, and if you're not, I look forward to just being your friend and getting to know you. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Now we will go through those who hadn't registered in advance, and we will start with Lucinda, then to Pete, and to anyone else who have shown up. So Lucinda, please come on up. You have 2 minutes per position to a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. So welcome.
Okay, thank you. The reason that I didn't get into the whole mix of things, I did leave phone call messages to people, but I'm going blind. And so I do invoke the American Disabilities Act. I do believe that this party needs to actually be inclusive of people that are disabled or have deficits, and I've got a visual deficit happening to me. If we could change some of the wording of how you send information out and not just have it be in the form of emails or Google polls that are on through an email, but rather a phone call would work for me much better. And I tried to communicate that to people at a couple different stages here for a couple of years, but it's getting worse, so I really do need phone calls from people. But that will not keep me from doing what I need to do. I'm trying to get reelected to the CD1. I've been an environmental caucus vote. I've been a clean green energy vote, a Bernie vote for a few years now. I don't know how long it's been. David could maybe tell you. Many years. I've been a Democrat for 44 years. And I've always been a person that had been involved in a lawsuit against the government for something that needed to change. When I was 15, the National Organization for Women knocked on my door and said, "Oh, we read your editorial and we heard that you couldn't get a scholarship because you were a woman, blah, blah, blah." And I was a test case for Title IX when I was 15. And so I started being a Democrat right away when I could really vote. I want to continue to what I've tried to do through Bernie. I voted for Bernie, I pushed for Bernie, I went to Philadelphia for Bernie, and I stood up with my peace sign for Bernie when the men in black suits said to sit down. And I guess that's the other thing that's important here is I have a commitment at a very deep level that when Brad Martin is telling me to sit down, I don't sit down. When Frank Dixon told me to sit down, I don't sit down. I try to be nice about it, and I'm a nonviolent Quaker, so I try to be peaceful about the process, but I won't sit down. And I did start the "No More War" chant when Leon Panetta was speaking, because I didn't want to see us do that again, because we've already been through that in my generation already. And I also stood up and had a no LNG, but it got co-opted by the other people around me. So right now, we should all be a little scared, be alert to the fact that the sheriff in Coos County, they hired goons from the corporation that is the Energy Pipeline Corporation trying to put Jordan Cove in. They hired them to be deputized with corporation money as deputies because he was told, "You don't have enough deputies for all the protesters you're going to need to arrest." Oh, okay. Anyway, I'm trying to be elected to CD1. I'm trying to be reelected to SCC so I can keep voting on the Environmental Caucus because somebody has to keep speaking up. And we need to start dealing with the recognition software that Amazon has. I have known Ron Wyden since 1975 when he had hair. And I will talk to him on the Intelligence Committee. I keep talking to him about things. And for once, they actually called me the other day. So that's kind of a good sign. But we need to keep pushing for not having a standing rock right here in our own state. And that means we have to push Kate, which means we need to invite her to go backpacking and camping along what the routes would be to Jordan Cove and see the salmon that would be destroyed and see the land that gets messed up and can't be mitigated and see the pieces of what we would lose. She needs to feel that. She needs to go on an outdoor science education camp experience and experience why we have to not let this happen. And I volunteered to take her camping so that she could see that. And she said, well, contact my office. So anybody else who wants to go and be her science educators with me about Jordan Cove, please talk to me. And and in platform and resolutions, we've got a lot of stuff we need to keep working on. And I'd like to be able to be there to continue to do that.
Thank you, Lucinda. Next up is Pete Lee. So Lucinda, I don't know if you mentioned it, you're from Washington County. Pete Lee is from Multnomah County. Come on up.
I'm actually not standing behind this podium for a reason. For the last 2 years, I've learned it's so important that one of the components of political change is meeting people where they're at their doors. So just this year alone, I've knocked easily on over 500 doors for some great folks: Julie DeGraw, Casey Jama, Joanne Hardesty, Tiffany Mitchell in Clatsop County, and most recently, I spent 3 weekends in Klamath County, knocking on doors there. I saw a lot of really tough things there that I'll bring up a little bit more. But if I could, well, first off, I'm running for Democratic Party of Oregon male vice chair position. Thank you. And I just want to say briefly 4 things. I'm going to put up a website. I'll have a more comprehensive plan, but I just want us to think about 4 things. Life. First off, L. I want to talk more about how our party can support labor more. Labor is dwindling. I've had the honor of being present on the picket lines a healthy amount with Burgerville Workers Union, among other things, some other local labor stuff, and I am a supporter of the Campaign Workers Guild as well. So lots of things that we need to do. We need to make sure that we're deeply connected to labor, that we talk about their real needs, and support labor organization activities that are happening all over the state, and also at the national level, in case I end up becoming also your DNC representative. I want to talk about inclusion. I'm glad that Lucinda brought up a great point about our need for our party to do better at. I don't know exactly how we're going to get there, but do better at including people with disabilities in what we have. I also believe that a statement made by communities of color that the loss of superdelegates in the first round of voting would have possible deleterious effects on their voices and their justifiable priorities. I want to make sure that at the local, state, and national level, we really do reach out to communities of color. We reach out to folks who identify as LGBTQI+, and other marginalized populations. F. So I love doors. I love supporting field. That's why I went to Klamath Falls. When I was there, I saw really difficult things. People who are scared. Quite frankly, honestly, talking to me at their door could get them fired, because there's a pretty strong, conservative, highly moneyed element in that town. I want us to make sure that we fix, and those in field will probably get this, we need to fix tools that support field. NGP van boat builder, these things need to get a lot better. And we need to make sure that we train folks better, that we have good pathways for it, and we ensure that technology gets out of the way. So I had the honor of supporting the Jamie for Oregon campaign running against our favorite person, Greg Walden. One more thing about field as well is that we got to stop just being present as Democrats every 2 years. People in Klamath Falls are highly suspicious of people who go canvassing because nothing really there awesome has happened for 10 years. They can't even see change being possible. So E, engagement. As vice chair, I will absolutely promote things where Democrats don't just show up every 2 years. I want the Democratic Party of Oregon to have a 365-day-a-year plan where anybody, they don't have to be Democrats, they can be Republicans, anybody, can call us and say, I need help. I can't get access to the services I need. I'm being evicted from my apartment. I want us to be present in people's lives so they can see that change can happen for them, and maybe then they'll go, you know what? Maybe my involvement in politics does mean something. That Democrat helped me. And also with E, we need clean energy jobs. I'm glad you mentioned Jordan Cove. It is not enough to be opposed to Jordan Cove. We have to be for something too. Renew Oregon's clean energy jobs. This is a take-home bill. We need to tax, cap, and invest so that places like Klamath Falls, Jordan Cove, and elsewhere, we give them an alternative, one that is about real economic development, one that's about really protecting our environment, and one that creates jobs and puts money into communities and not shipped overseas to some faceless and evil petrol company. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Pete Lee. I would appreciate your support in my run for Democratic Party of Oregon, male vice chair.
Thank you, Pete. Next up from Multnomah County, John Knight. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, everybody. Do I have the microphone up here good enough? All right. So for those who don't know me, I'm John Harris Knight. Currently, I am serving on the State Central Committee, also serving as the delegation chair for Multnomah County. Also, through that capacity, I'm serving on the Platform Resolution Committee for the DPO. Very much enjoyed the process of this past couple of years, serving the county as an SEC delegate. I would definitely like to continue doing so as an SEC delegate. That'd be great. More importantly, I think that what we've done over the last couple of years has really changed the trajectory of this party, set it up to be a real progressive force. And I know that we have not been able to do all the things that we would love to have been able to do, but I definitely hear in this room a lot of people who think that we can keep going and keep pushing. I like what Lucinda said about holding our elected officials accountable, no matter how important they are to the success of this party. I think it's also important that we take that platform, like Mark was talking about, take that platform and really push it. We have so many things in our platform that are practical and useful, and as some other folks have said, it does die to a degree if we don't keep it alive. The platform itself, we're going to always keep developing it and trying to make it better. We need to make it better when it comes to race and inclusion. We need to make it better when it comes to our economic vision. We need to make it better when it comes to really having a concise economic message that can counter the simplistic economic message of the Republicans. I think that there are a lot of solutions there that we just are not tapping into. I've seen plenty of things. I happen to serve as the subcommittee coordinator chair type person for the drafting process of the economy article of the platform, and I know that there are tons of possible things we could have included that are more progressive than what's even in there, but getting people to really consolidate their notions around those issues to say, we can do this. This is something we can put on paper and try to execute at the state, federal, local levels. On top of that, we need to make sure that when we are engaging our communities, we are building, a lot of people already said this, like Pete Lee was saying, knocking on doors. I'm a strong supporter of the Neighborhood Leader Program. I've got my Multnomah County Neighborhood Leader Program button on right now. I am the chair of the work group again, one of those kinds of things where we've done a lot, but there are a lot of things we could do to keep improving those kinds of programs. So as a state central committee member, I would love to keep pushing for an expansion and improvement of what our Neighborhood Leader program does. The program itself is primarily geared toward that GOTV thing, and it only really is pulled out for a lot of our counties around election time. And as Pete was saying, we need to do far more to connect with our communities, whether it's in Multnomah County or the Portland metro area where our neighborhoods are a little bit more concentrated, or in rural communities where the manner of engaging your neighbors is a lot more challenging. But we need to be doing this several times a year, quarterly. We need to be doing this through constructive and novel methods to try to make sure that people know that we are not just there for their vote, we are there for them. I'm not going to echo everything Pete said because I thought that was great. But for us to do that together as a state central committee, as a Democratic Party of Oregon, we need to be making sure that we are connecting to our counties first, prioritize that bottom-up notion that we feel like we're supposed to have in this party, making sure that counties are feeding us information to the top toward the leadership of the DPO, as well as also saying this is what we need our paid staff to do. To say that the membership of this party needs to have a little bit more of a leading role in what the paid staff of the DPO office is entrusted with and challenged to do. And now I definitely appreciate all the work they've done, and we all know Candy and Ron Morgan and all those folks are doing a lot of work. Brad Martin has put in his time and done a lot of effort to make us successful as a state party. But we need to be able to decide what we do with the party. We need to decide how NGP van is allocated. We're talking about whether or not we're going to cede the power over which candidates get van access. I definitely think that any candidate should be, anyone who is an incumbent or wants to be a candidate should expect a challenger. I think it's healthy for our democracy to have a challenger for every position. No matter how good our incumbents are, I think that it's healthy for them to expect that, and for this party not to impede the democratic process in that regard. Lastly, I just want to say that I know that we have a lot of values that we brought up 2 years ago when we talked about what we want to do to fix our county parties, our state party, to make it more functional and more accessible for all. I definitely want to encourage us to think back, look back in your notes, look back in your campaign materials when you ran for your positions, and think about what it is that we said then that we need to make sure we continue now. I don't want to go through a list of all that because I think that's for each of us to sort out. That's a personal, ethical thing to figure out, but I definitely want us to have that conversation together in the future. So again, John Harris Knight, I want to be on the SEC again. For now, that's all I'll say, but thank you very much.
Thank you, John. David, did you want to speak? All the way from Tillamook County, we have the current chair of the Tillamook County Democrats, David McCall. Thank you for coming out.
Hey, thank you. So let me start by saying I'm a middle-aged white guy who has been a registered Democrat since Al Gore visited my college campus back the first time he ran for president, and probably when we should have elected him. But until about 5 years ago, I had never heard of the term PCP. It's true that I lived abroad most of my adult life, but even being back in the States, my local party did nothing to explain and reach out. 4.5 years ago, I ran and was elected as one of 8 elected PCPs in my county party. About 4 years ago, I was asked if I would consider being chair. 6 of us were in the room when I was elected chair, but I had a full slate of officers. Now, it was tough, but we did get them together. Now, 4 years later, We elected 27 PCPs this May. That's a pretty substantial increase, but we still have about 40 left to fill. But what I'm most proud of is we've had to move the location of our monthly meetings because we've outgrown the room twice. And no offense, but if I had a monthly meeting with only this many people here in the room, I'd be ticked off. One of the things that we have managed to do is actually bring our party and our values to the doors of people. I'll tell you, I don't consider myself a progressive. I consider myself a normal person with common sense and a good base of values and a strong sense of ethics. It's very unfortunate that people with good values and ethics and common sense get the label of progressive, because I think that's what every single person should be. But if that's what it takes to be labeled, we need a label of progressive to say that good normal people are progressives, then so be it. What we have done is we've managed to go out and bring our party's message to so many people and so many doors. I think, played a pretty good role along with our neighbors to the north in Clatsop County in getting a decisive victory for Tiffany Mitchell, who's going to be representing us in the House. We also are sending David Gamba back to Salem as our representative from the southern part of Tillamook County, along with Lincoln County. And on our local level, something really important. For the last 20 years, we have had a Blue Dog Democrat sitting on our three-person county commission. He is retiring, and he is being replaced with a good progressive, a real forward-thinking liberal mind. And actually, when we were out canvassing, we had people say to us, I get it. This is the fourth time you've been here in the last 6 weeks. I'm going to vote. And I think that really helped Tiffany and David succeed the way they've succeeded. When I was elected chair 4 years ago, I found out afterwards that there's such a thing as a state central committee and congressional committees. Because in our county, as in many of the rural counties, the chair and vice chair are automatic delegates to the CD and CD5 in our case, and the SCC. I went, got involved. One thing led to another. 2 years ago, I was elected chair of the Environmental Caucus. That day, we passed, I think it was unanimously, a resolution on aerial spraying. And that was the first one passed after the election 2 years ago. And I was also the primary drafter for one of our most recent resolutions, the one calling on the DNC folks to work together with environment and labor, not cause us to fight against each other. So what I'm doing, I'm running for county chair one last time. And I say this one last time because if I fulfill this, it'll be 6 years. And I think we need not to just talk about term limits, but actually put them into practice. And over the next 2 years, I'm going to have two tasks that are really high on my list. One task is to make sure that I've got a good team in place that can carry on and do a whole lot better than I could ever lead them to do. And the second thing, I want to make sure that our elected officials, who we've gone out and knocked on doors for them, got them elected, the governor, our federal representatives, and all the way down, actually let us know when they come to our counties. Because I am sick and tired of reading in the newspaper that Congressman Schrader or Governor Brown was in town last week, but they can't let their own party know they're going to come so that we can come out and show some support for them. I want to make sure that the communication is working two ways so we can show them support throughout the entire year. And on that note, I thank you.
Thank you, David. David neglected to count the millions of people that are out watching us on the internet. Is there any other candidates that would like to speak today? Do we get everybody? Okay. We had 2 questions that I'm aware of from the internet. The first one was, if I am a precinct committee person and I move to another precinct, what do I do? What is my status? And the second question was, where does it say in the Oregon statutes that you have to mail notices to the party? I know the answer to both of these are in ORS 248, so I would recommend that you go read that. We also made a video. It turned out to be a long video. It's an hour and 18 minutes, but it goes through the processes and the rules around holding reorganizations, elections, which can be very, very complicated. You know, if there's one person for every position, then it's pretty much slam dunk. Everyone's elected by acclamation. When you start having contested elections, it's a much more involved process, and you have to understand the rules around voting in order for those to done correctly. Plus, we have new rules from the Democratic Party of Oregon, which we've talked about earlier, about non-binary candidates. So I will make sure that the video is prominently displayed on advancementofdemocracy.org, so you can listen to that. And then, Sean, I will get that answer to you after I get home tonight. I want to also talk about the change that Dan spoke to. So when you get elected in November, you will be an acting delegate to the State Central Committee on December 2nd. This is critically important because we're going to be voting on Rule 13. There are things that the Democratic Party of Oregon gets blamed for, and Democrats in aggregate. They are things that tend not to have been approved by the State Central Committee itself. The governing body of the Democratic Party of Oregon is the State Central Committee. It's not the governor, it's not the legislature, it's not the dark state operating in the background. It is the State Central Committee who is responsible for this stuff. And what we're doing with Rule 13 is bringing policies that are contrary to the beliefs of so many Democrats up to a vote, or for the possibility of a vote, so that they can weigh in on these issues. And one of them is what John talked about, which is access to the van. We want a level playing field for all candidates who run for Democratic Party offices. We don't think that preferences should be given to incumbents. So that is coming up, and we really ask for the support of all the State Central Committee people that are being elected in advance of that meeting. Again, these events are expensive to run, so if you would please donate. You can go to advancementofdemocracy.org. The tickets for this event are going to be available for the rest of the day, and so if you could go out and throw $10 at us or $27, that would be great. We have a question in the audience. David. Yes, so the point that David's making is that he's questioning my memory, and everyone should always do that because my memory is getting old and faulty. So I might have misremembered that Oregon statute, and so I will go clarify what it states. Ultimately, though, county bylaws do not trump Oregon statutes, so if it does stay in Oregon statutes, then that's what they have to do. Is there any other questions from the floor? Sally? That is in state law. I don't know. I've not heard of anyone wanting to change it. Ashley. Oh, okay. So that question was, has there been interest in changing the law that only elected PCPs can vote for officers? And I'm not aware of that. Uh, uh, so it's 248.024? Okay, section 2. So that's where the statute is, and I can't wait to go home and read it. Thank you. That's where it talks about notification of precinct committee persons. 024. Oh, move precincts. I'm sorry. So that's if you've moved precincts, go to 248.024. Okay, so it does allow party bylaws to notify them. You do get in trouble though if because it is your responsibility to notify them if they do not receive a notice. And if you do this by MailChimp, you are putting yourself at risk because only 30% of MailChimp messages get read. Any other questions today? Okay, that concludes our program. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Again, please, if you want to get involved with the progressive movement, go to advancementofdemocracy.org. We have a number of programs going on, one of which is recruiting candidates to replace some of the people that are currently in office. We also have a program for the study of parliamentary rules and democracy. We have a virtual group which anyone in the state can join and listen via conference call. If you are interested in that, go to pdpo.org and we will get you signed up. Other than that, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to all of our speakers. Let's give everyone a round of applause. Thank you for coming today, and that concludes our show. Thank you, Ashley, for being our camera operator, and thank you, John, for being at the headquarters of Uphill Media. Goodbye.
All right, everybody. That was our event. Thank you all for joining us. Sarah, I don't know if you caught that. Sarah Spansel in the audience, or if you caught Larry at the very end there, he mentioned the I don't even know what it was. Somewhere in the statutes to go and look up that information about what happens when you change precincts. He finally got that through. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate that. Schultze, you got here just in time for us to split. Yeah, I don't know if you caught what was going on there, but go back to the very beginning. If you guys are jumping in late, make sure you catch what Larry has to say. Skip the first 10 minutes. That's just me waiting for them to start. And Larry gives a very good explanation of what this is. This isn't the end. If you want to run for these positions, just go talk to your county office, find out what you need to do there. This was just for people to get up and present on why they want to run for particular positions. But for the DPO specific positions, that's not happening until March. So we got plenty of time. You got plenty of time to make speeches for for your county level positions and the state delegates. That's all county stuff. So you just need to go to your county and find out when your reorg is happening. Some of them, the reorgs are happening on the 15th. So you only have a few days. But really, all you got to do is show up to your meeting and say, I'd like to run to be this. Right? Like I went to mine. I'm Lynn County, and I asked Nancy Greenman, who runs our neighborhood leadership program. I said, Nancy, I'm a terrible PCP because I talked to just a few of my neighbors, but what could I be an SCC delegate because I actually have the time and the means to travel the state, whereas a lot of people don't. And she's like, we have it covered. She goes, we have a good group of SCC delegates. You don't need to run. That may be the case with your party. Even so, if you don't think one of your delegates is what needs to be there, if they're not progressive enough for you, run for the role, right? That's what this is all about, is filling these roles of power with people that we think are going to be progressive, are going to really move democracy forward. Because right now we got so many of these people in positions of power that are just clutching purse strings, right? So you can definitely run for all these things. You're welcome, Barbara. Thank you all so much for being here and for supporting us. Really appreciate that. Hey, Charles, congratulations again. Just real quick, in case we're not done here. We're just gonna focus on internal stuff for a while. And we'll see you guys soon in a few days. Remember, we got the thing coming up with Lee Camp. Join us for that Friday, early in the morning, 9 a.m. Pacific. Conversation with Lee Camp. We're going to talk about the future of independent media. And yes, of course, we're going to get out of here with a song. You should still come to then and cover them on YouTube. You know, Sarah, that requires support of the Progressive Democratic Party of Oregon, which we really haven't been able to get enough of it to sustain operations. I'd love to have greater support of the Democratic Party of Oregon, but we've been struggling with that, and so we're kind of backed off things. So that's another conversation. We'll have that another time. You all are wonderful. Thank you all for being here, and we're gonna get out of here with a song. This song is I picked this one for a reason, not just because I think it fits the mood, but there's a story behind it. We're at a turning point with our democracy. Not only are we getting more active in democracy, but we're getting more aggressive with it, and it's about time. We don't have a lot of time left, right? Scientists say we got about a decade to get our shit together on climate change. We don't have a decade to get our government together to get our shit together on climate change. Right? Our government has to have its shit together a lot sooner so that we can develop a plan so that we can save our asses. Right? Our clock's ticking. If this were an Armageddon movie, the asteroid's almost here. We can see it in the sky. And our government's like, there's no asteroid. There's nothing there. Right? War. This is where we're at. So we have to be more aggressive with our democracy. And I think with as frustrated as many of us are right now with what's going on and how slow things are moving, and the fact that even though we had a bit of a blue wave and we've seen a lot of progressive reform happen, that the changes, we don't have the time to wait. We need to think bigger. We need to paint with barns, right? So whenever I get that angry about things, I like to think of this song, If I Had a Rocket Launcher, right? Bruce Coburn. This is a guy doing a cover of it. His name is Carl Reed. And this is just a very, it's just kind of a gripping version of it. This guy, Carl Reed, did this cover. And somebody just posted it who did a recording of him. Carl died in the early 2000s from a brain tumor. And I often wonder, could he have been saved, or would things have been different had he had, health care for all? Just like would Scott have been alive today had we had real democracy with real health care. So it gets me really angry when I think about that, and I go to I want to pull out the pitchfork and forget the ballot, and I got to take that rage and rehone it into something useful until the time comes when we really do need to grab the pitchfork. So let's go out with this together. This is If I Had a Rocket Launcher, Carl Reed. Thank you everybody for being here.
This one's called Rocket Launcher by Bruce Coburn. Learned this when I was in Australia. Off a guy called Davey Love. Here comes a helicopter, for a second time today. Everybody scatters, hopes it goes away. How many kids they murdered, only God can say. If I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, I'd make somebody pay. I don't believe in bodyguards, and I don't believe in hate, and I don't believe in generals or their stinking torture states. When I talk with the survivors of things too sickening to relate, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, I would not hesitate. On the Rio Ascenten, 100,000 wait to fall down from starvation, some less humane fate. Cry for Guatemala with a corpse in every cascade. If I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, I would retaliate. Gonna raise every voice, but at least I've got to try. Every time I think about it, water rises to my eyes. The situation's desperate, echoes of the victim's cry. If I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, if I had a rocket launcher, some son of a bitch would die. Some son of a bitch would die. Some son of a bitch would die.